Makkot, Daf Yomi Makkot, character counts, Talmud, She'ino, Hagun. We talked yesterday about the importance of Derech Eretz, and the Derech Eretz Kadma Torah. Derech Eretz came before Torah, and Kadma Torah also, it comes before Torah, which means that in teaching and in learning Torah, it's important that the person who's learning Torah is somebody who has Derech Eretz, and that the person teaching Torah is teaching to people who have Derech Eretz. What do we mean by Derech Eretz, and why? How does it play out? We'll see in our Gemara, where we're based on the psukim, the verses in the Torah that deal with this city of refuge available to somebody who is killed unintentionally. As Yavdil Moshe Shalosh Harim Be'ever Yarden Mizrach HaShamesh, Moshe then separated 3 cities on the other side of the Jordan. Lanus Shama Rotzeach Hashi Yitzach et Re'eu Bli Dat, for a murderer who killed somebody unintentionally. V'hu lo sonei lo mitmol shilshom. This is not somebody who has any grudge against this person, doesn't hate this person, clearly was not intentional. V'nas el achat harim ha'il, and he will then flee to one of these cities. V'chai, and there he will live. And that word chai is more than exist, that he will survive there, that he will be protected there. V'chai, there's a sense of chayus, of alive. He can live a full and vital life in this city. What does that mean, living a full and vital life? Says the Gemara, Tana, Talmid shigala megalin rabo imo. We have a principle that if a student of Torah, God forbid, causes an unintentional death, has to go to one of these cities for galut, the Rebbe has to go as well. His teacher, his Torah teacher, has to go with him. Shenema v'chai, because it says v'chai. Avid le midi detevi le chayuta. You've got to provide him with life. And for a Talmid Chochem, what's life without learning, and what's learning without a Rebbe? So if he's gone and thereby he loses his attachment to his Rebbe, because the relationship between a Talmid and a Rebbe, and anybody who's learned with great Rabbeim knows exactly what that means. That's like plugging in. When you're connected to your Rebbe, you're connected to the Rebbe as an ongoing source of Torah. It's not just that he teaches you information. Now I've got the information, I pass my exams and I carry on. I'm now qualified. That's not how it works in Torah. In Torah, it's an ongoing connection to a Rebbe, which is the vehicle through which Torah comes min hashamayim. As I've spoken so often about the unbelievable privileges I had to learn with such amazingly great people who were great in the generation before the Second World War already, and to sit in their presence and to learn from them, to just speak to them. The feeling was always you're in the presence of the Ribbono Shel Olam. This is not just the presence of a great person. This is a person who is a channel of Torah and of Chochmah directly from the Ribbono Shel Olam to you. It was an amazing spiritual experience to sit in front of a Rebbe. And a person has to go to Galut. You can't deprive him of that opportunity. That's like disconnecting him from his source of life. Omer Rabbi Zera, says Rabbi Zera, Mikan, from here you learn. Shelo yeshaneh adam leTalmid she'eino hagun. Be careful who you accept as a Talmid. Why? Because if you accept somebody as a Talmid who lands up, God forbid, killing somebody unintentionally, he goes to the Arei Miklat, he goes to a refuge city, and you have to go with him. It's risky. Why take the risk of teaching somebody who might land up in a place where you might not want to live? And you have to leave your yeshiva and you have to go and teach in this place which is full of people who've committed unintentional murders. That's what the Gemara says, which seems to be good advice. It doesn't seem to be that you're not allowed to. The Rabbi Zera is just saying it's a good idea to be careful who you teach. Why? How do you control this? Says Rashi. What is a Talmid she'eino hagun? Shelo yaviehu avonotav lidei hariga b'shogeg. Because the Gemara says on the next page, on the next Talmud, that who lands up killing people unintentionally, it's a way that the Ribbono Shel Olam, so to say, punishes somebody who's not as he should be. She'eino matsui ela b'rushaim. Somebody has to be somewhat of a rasha, somewhat wicked, somebody off the tracks, for that to happen to them. So Rashi learns it kind of Kabbalistically, that the Ribbono Shel Olam brings about the opportunity for an individual to kill somebody unintentionally because there are other things he's not doing. And his punishment is to go to these towns, and there he should reflect for a long time and hopefully do tshuva and improve himself. The Nemuchi Yosef learns it subtly differently, but it's so important. The Nemuchi Yosef says, Shema yizdamen lo sheyaharog kivan she'eino zahir. This is not about a Rosha. This is about a person who lacks self-awareness. Zahirut, a good translation for Zahirut is awareness, self-awareness. to be aware of what you're doing, to be aware of what you're feeling, to be aware of the impact you're having on the people around you, to be aware of the way you make the people around you feel about you, feel about themselves, feel about the Torah, just to be aware of your energy, of what kind of impact you're having. And a study was done in Stanford University not long ago where they found this to be the most important characteristic of a successful leader, is somebody who excels in self-awareness, that sense of zehirut, awareness also of consequence, of first-order consequence, second-order consequence, third-order consequence. That's part of awareness. And I've told you that Rosh Yeshiva Rebbe Mishkovsky told me that he accepts or rejects people into the yeshiva on the basis of the awareness they demonstrate when they walk. We'd watch them walking in the Beis HaMedrash. Are they aware of the people around them? Are they aware of the furniture? Are they aware of the fact that they took a sefer out, they should put the sefer back? Are they aware of the fact that there's a piece of paper on the floor, they should pick it up? To what degree are you actually aware of what's happening around you and your impact on your environment? And that's the zihirut. And if a person is not a zahir, if somebody lacks the character trait of zahirut, says the Nemuki Yosef, this is not like Rashi, that if somebody does averas and because of a Kabbalistic thing, Hashem creates a situation where he lands up murdering somebody and he's got to go to one of these cities. No, it's not anything indirect like that at all. It's very direct. It's just a person who lacks self-awareness, who doesn't have derech eretz. If we think derech eretz is a luxury, some people have derech eretz, some people no. If you define the foundation of derech eretz as being awareness, that's what derech eretz is. I'm aware of what's happening around me. I'm aware of the derech eretz. I'm aware of the way of the world. I know how to behave in different situations. I'm sensitive to the environment in which I am. I'm sensitive to the impact I'm having in the environment in which I am. That's derech eretz. We see from here, from this Nemuki Yosef and this Gemara, that can, God forbid, lead to people killing other people. They can drive in a way that causes accidents. They can talk on their phone while they're driving or text while they're driving. They can do, people who don't have derech eretz do these things. They can cause other people a lot of agmas nefesh, other people a lot of suffering, even, God forbid, death itself. That's how serious derech eretz is. And don't teach somebody who hasn't got derech eretz, because he's going to land up doing bad things. So firstly, altogether, that's not so good that he's going to land up doing bad things. But he'll schlep you into it. You become part of those bad things, because if, God forbid, he kills somebody, you have to go to the Arei Miklat as well. So once again, the difference in Rashi and the Nemuki Yosef is just what she'ino hagun means. What does it mean, a person who's not refined, a person who's not proper? Does it mean somebody who does averos, or does it mean somebody who doesn't have derech eretz? The Nemuki Yosef learns that somebody who doesn't have derech eretz. Now we have a parallel but slightly different sugi in Chulin, where Rabbi Zera, also the same Rabbi Zera, says, but here he says in the name of Rav, Kol hashoneh letalmid she'eino hagun kazorek even lemarkulis. There was a certain avodah zorah where you would throw a stone on a pile, and the pile would get bigger and bigger. And Rashi says there in Chulin, shezuhi avodato, that's the avodah zorah. You throw a stone onto the pile, and that's how you serve this form of idolatry. And teaching a Talmud she'eino hagun, let's follow the Nemuki Yosef's approach. If you're teaching a Talmud who lacks awareness, if you're teaching a person who lacks derech eretz, it's like throwing a stone onto the markulis pile. Shneimar kitzror even b'margema ken noten l'ksil kavod, and so on. He brings a raya. The Gemara brings a raya. That's another statement of Rabbi Zera. This one in the name of Rav. But the difference between them is profound, because in our Gemara it's advice. I'm giving you good advice. As a Rebbe, be careful who you teach. Because if you teach somebody that lacks derech eretz, you could be schlepped into a galut. You don't want to get there, so just select your students carefully. But the Gemara in Chulin is osur. This is like idolatry. Just as you're not allowed to throw a stone on this pile, and if you do, it's an isur of idolatry. So it's an isur to teach a student that lacks awareness and derech eretz. So that's a big difference in the sugyas, which explains a Kesef Mishnah. There's a difficult Kesef Mishnah. I think it's difficult. The Rambam says in Hilchos Talmud Torah, Ein melamdim Torah ela letalmid hagun na'eh b'ma'asav. Look at what the word the Rambam uses. You don't teach Torah to anybody other than a student who is refined and has beautiful actions, behaves beautifully. Is the Rambam talking about he doesn't keep Shabbos or Kashrus, or is the Rambam talking about he has self-awareness? Clearly he's talking about Midas. All the time. So you see where the Nemuchi Yosef is getting from, that this sugya is about Midas. All the time, or somebody you don't know. He seems okay, you don't know any details. But if he behaves badly, first teach him derech eretz. Like we learned yesterday, you've got to learn derech eretz. So teach him, give him a shir in derech eretz. I don't know if yeshivas have derech eretz classes, but they should have. They've got halacha classes, they've got gemara classes, they've got musar classes. But derech eretz is not musar. Derech eretz is long before musar. You can't start musar if you don't have self-awareness. So are there classes in self-awareness? Are there classes in derech eretz? First teach him derech eretz. And get him used to behaving in a certain way. And then give him an exam, then give him a test. They have a Rabbanut test like everybody takes for the smichas. They'll take a derech eretz test before they can come into yeshiva. Then you can teach him. Where does the Rambam get this from? Ein melamdim Torah ela letalmid hagun na'eh b'ma'asav. Says the Kesef Mishnah. He brings two sources. The one is the Gemara in Brochus, where Rabbi Gamliel wanted to not teach anybody whose inside was not like their outside. They look like a frum person, they look like a religious person, but they don't have derech eretz, they don't have self-awareness. So he wouldn't take them in. Eventually they changed that and they allowed an ordinary person to come in. But it still remains, as the Rambam says, if you know he's not a well-behaved person, you certainly can't teach him Torah. What changed with Rabbi Gamliel was they decided you don't have to pass an exam in derech eretz before you're admitted to the Beis HaMedrash. An ordinary person gets admitted. If you find he's not what he should be, then you get rid of him. So that's the Gemara in Brochus, and on the din in the Rambam, Kol hashoneh letalmid she'eino hagun. That comes from Chulin, from the Gemara in Chulin and Daf Kuf Lamed Gimel. That's the source. Interestingly, the Kesef Mishnah, who's the Mechaber of the Shulchan Aruch, doesn't mention our Gemara at all as a source for the Rambam. So that means he must hold that our Gemara is good advice. And the Rambam's not saying good advice. What is the Rambam saying? Ein melamdim, etc. Says the Rambam, you're not allowed to teach somebody who isn't hagun na'eh b'ma'asav. It's not permitted, it's an isur. So it can't be from our Gemara. Our Gemara is an eitzah tovah. Our Gemara is giving good advice. The advice is be careful who you teach, because you can end up having to live in a funny place and you don't want to do that. So be careful who you select. It's good advice. But if you want to take your life into your own hands, you want to take the risk, go ahead, do what you want to do. But I'm advising you, says Rabbi Zera, not to do it. But the Gemara in Chulin, Daf Kuf Lamed Gimel, that's if you do that, if you teach a Talmid She'eino Hagun, says Rashi, Zui Avodato, it's like serving idolatry, it's a prohibition. That's the source of the Rambam, says the Kesef Mishnah, because the Rambam's not talking about advice, the Rambam's talking about Isur Veheter, about what's permitted and what's prohibited. The difficulty is that the Migdal Oz was a Talmud of the Rashbo, a Rishon who also writes on the Rambam, and often gives sources for the Rambam, and sometimes different from the sources of the Kesef Mishnah. And the Migdal Oz brings our Gemara. Ein melamdim adam melamed oto perik elu hein hagolim makas daf yud. And it's interesting that this is the only piece of Gemara from this entire perik that the Rif brings. That the Rif brings this lahalacha. So the Rambam reads our Gemara not as good advice. The Rambam reads our Gemara according to the Migdal Oz. The Rambam reads our Gemara, unlike the way the Kesef Mishnah learns it, the Migdal Oz learns it, the Rambam learns our Gemara as Isur Veheter. You're not permitted to do that. And it's interesting that the Ein Mishpat is the Masoras Hashas, it's the Shiltei Giborim, who on the side gives the references. He does reference the Rambam in Hilchos Talmud Torah on this Gemara here in Makkos. So we've got the Ein Mishpat and the Migdal Oz, both aligning the Rambam with our piece of Gemara, unlike the Kesef Mishnah, who doesn't. The Kesef Mishnah doesn't align the Rambam with our piece of Gemara because he understands our Gemara to be Eitzah Tova, to be giving advice. Whereas the Gemara in Chulin is osur, it's not permitted to do so. But clearly the Migdal Oz and the Ein Mishpat believe that our Gemara, and the Rif, believe that our Gemara is also Isur. It's teaching us something you're not allowed to do. Where do you see that in our Gemara? In our Gemara, it's quite clear. What's it saying? Why must you do it? Mikan, from here. Rabbi Zera doesn't bring a posuk. He says, Mikan, from the fact that you have to go to Golus, if your Talmud commits an unintentional murder, from here you see that you shouldn't take a Talmud who might commit an unintentional murder. Not a wise thing to do, not a good thing to do. Where do you see an Isu? Where does the Migdal Oz and the Rif and the in Mishpat, where do they see in our piece of Gemara that this is an Isu? You're not allowed to do this. So I found in the Aruch LaNer, in passing, he's busy answering a different question of the Marsho. He answers in a different way, but in passing, look what he says. Aval yesh lomar, de lo etza tova bilvad. Our sugya is not just giving good advice. Ela isur kamashmalan. It's teaching us an isur. So he gets to that through the Marsho's question. The Aruch LaNer gets to this conclusion, but it explains the Migdal Oz. This is not Eitzah Tova. Why? What is the isur? The isur is amazing. It's fascinating. Anybody who teaches Torah, any rabbi, any educator should understand this Aruch LaNer. Shelo yachshov elmod gam im eino hagun leman yagdil Torah v'yadir. I'm not going to be too fussy about who I teach, because you've got to have lots of Talmidim. Build a yeshiva. We need a big yeshiva. I want lots of people at my shir. I want lots of people learning Torah. I want there to be more Torah in the world. What's wrong with that? I've got 50 Talmidim. I would like 100. I've got 100. I would like 10,000. What's so wrong with that? Have everybody learning Torah. It's a good thing. And look what the Aruch LaNer says, because don't think you're gaining. You're going to lose. By increasing quantity, you decrease quality. But note, look what he says. Not just you decreasing quality of the Talmidim. It's not just the caliber of student you have that goes down. What does he say? Lafsid limud torato. Your learning goes down. That's what lands up happening. You think you're increasing the Torah, your own learning will suffer. He doesn't say lafsid lelamed torato. He says lafsid limud torato. Because if one person out of your 10,000 commits a murder unintentionally, he runs over somebody in the street, he has an accident, he commits a murder, totally unintentionally, he has to go to Golus, you have to go with him, and you have to leave your entire yeshiva. The yeshiva doesn't go with him, so Reuven commits a murder unintentionally. Reb Shimon, the Rebbe, has to go in Golus. What about the 1,000 Talmidim he's collected? They stay where they are. They stay in Radana. And he goes off on his own with one Talmid. Mishum v'chai. Aval harag Talmido, because if the Talmid commits a murder, the yeshiva doesn't go, only the Rebbe goes. V'imken yevatel al yedei zeh mililmod im rabim. And as a result of this, he will lose out learning with many. Again, he's not even saying lelamed et harabim. We're not worried about he won't be able to teach the rabbim. The rabbim will get another teacher. They'll replace him. There are plenty of Rosh Yeshivas around. They'll get another Rosh Yeshiva. That's not the problem. His own learning will suffer. Why will his own learning suffer? Because a Rebbe learns from his Talmidim. Says the Gemara in Tainis, that's why Nimshuli divrei Torah ka'etz, shenema etz chaim ilim mechazikim ba. That's why the Torah is compared to wood. Ma etz katan madliket hagadol. A little match can light up a huge building. It can set a building on light. Kach af talmidei chacham ktanim mechadedim et hagadolim. Even junior Talmidim can sharpen and teach and help the Rebbe. The Rebbe gains a fortune from his Talmidim. So if I've got 10 Talmidim, there's 10 people that are stimulating me. If I've got 1,000 Talmidim, there are 1,000 who are stimulating me. For that reason, there's reason to have many, but they have to be the right people. Because what the Aruch LaNer, the way the Aruch LaNer is learning this Gemara, I would suggest, is not only in the unlikely circumstance of 1 in a million that one of the boys in the yeshiva is going to commit a murder unintentionally. That's not what we're worried about. It's a general principle. The principle is that you land up, you think by increasing quantity you're doing well, but the fact is you're decreasing the quality, your own quality. Because this, that the Ktanim Mechadedim et Hagdolim, is provided they're people who have Derech Eretz, provided they're people who should be learning Torah, provided they're people who are learning Torah with the right mindset, with a sense of awareness, with humility, with curiosity, with generosity. They're learning with all the right midot. They're not learning with bad midot and with gaiva and kedei lekanter. The Rebbe is not going to gain anything from those Talmidim. So you have to be careful when a Rebbe is choosing his Talmidim. He's not only choosing who he's teaching, he's also choosing his Rabbeim. He's choosing who he's learning from. A teacher learns from his students. I've learned more from my students than anybody else. the questions they ask, but more than that, just them being present. We've often talked about that, what it means to have a live share of people who are present and learning and participating and curious. That's mechaded the Rebbe. The Rebbe, when he's preparing the shir, he's preparing for the people who's there, aware of their need to know, desire to know, and sharpness of intellect. And so he prepares and he learns more carefully. And that you're going to land up losing out. You think just by adding Talmidim, you're getting more, and it's a wonderful thing. We used to have 100, now we've got 1,000. Look at the quality. Because what's important in your own learning and in the learning of the Torah that you're teaching is not just how many people you're teaching, how many people you're learning with. What's important, at least as important, is the quality of those people. Are they Talmidim Hagunim, as the Nemekah Yosef says, people who are Zehirim, people who have a sense of self-awareness, a sense of caution, a sense of understanding consequence, understanding their impact on their environment. If those are their Talmidim, then the more the better. But never compromise the quality of Talmud in order to gain the quantity.